I love dumplings. Not only are they absolutely delicious, they're also super fun to share with family and friends. There's so many varieties of dumplings that we're just gonna focus in on 3 today. A shumai with pork and prawn, a soup dumpling with pork and crab, and finally we're gonna do more of a modern, very untraditional gyoza or potsticker with miso roasted pumpkin. So let's get stuck in. Pork and prawn shumai, starting with the pork, and you want something with a bit of fat in there. You don't want like a super lean pork. We're just gonna dice up 200 grams of raw prawn meat. Doesn't need to be super fine, but you also don't want massive chunks. These are a local prawn and a nice small size. I think the smaller ones can tend to be a bit sweeter. Now, if you're from North America and you're thinking, I can't get a prawn, it's basically a shrimp as far as flavor and texture is concerned anyway. I went to the fishmonger this morning. She had a whole bunch of peeled and deveined ones there ready. So I saved myself the time and brought some of those. So just go through, make sure you don't have any really large pieces. And in the bowl they go. To start to season it, gotta just get those big bits off and peel that with a spoon. And then I just like to grate it on the microplane. And that is enough, I'd say. I'm gonna call that a tablespoon of minced ginger. MSG. If you don't like it, leave it out, it's no big deal. Some white pepper, corn flour, that's just to help bind it when we start putting some liquids in there. A little bit of sugar, some Chinese cooking wine, soy sauce, and a little bit of sesame oil. Now we're gonna mix this, and it's best to use your hands, and that way you really kind of work the proteins in that, in the pork. Once you feel the mix become a lot kind of stickier, that's when you're good to go. And it's as simple as that. Now it's just a matter of wrapping them up. I'll show you how to do that now. To roll shumai, wonton wrappers, yellow ones. Something to put them in once they're rolled, just give it a light dusting with corn flour. Kind of what that does is, even though this is dry, it just kind of really absorbs any weird bits of moisture in there. Because if there's any moisture, they'll stick to the bottom. I think these are a little bit big though for what we're doing, so I'm gonna cut them down. So I'm just gonna trim 1 centimeter off one side and then turn it 90 degrees and we'll cut 1 centimeter off the other side. And then I'm just gonna take the corners off. And the reason that we cut those corners off is because basically we're making a round dumpling. So if we start with a more rounded paper, it's gonna make it easier. So the other super important thing to remember is you don't want these to dry out. So the way we keep these nice and damp is by having a shucks or any kind of dishcloth. We get it wet and then just wring it out tightly and then keep it covered like that. Take a wrapper and then take some of your filling that you've lovingly made and you're gonna put it into the center. It usually takes a couple to get your eye in. You could weigh it, but you can kind of add and take it out in this one. Then you simply bring it together with like kind of lots of folds around the outside. You're gonna make a ring and you use your thumb and your index finger to push it. So I haven't put enough in this one, so I'm gonna put a little bit more and then push it in. I like this size because you can kind of eat it. Well, I can eat it in one mouthful. A more polite person, they might have 2, but I think, one mouthful is kind of the correct amount. So there we go, our first one. For a first attempt, I'm pretty happy with that. The only other thing that I like to do is I push a little divot in the bottom. A Chinese guy taught me that. I don't actually know what it does, but I've always done it, so. If anyone knows, then let me know in the comments. There you go, there's one done, let's make the rest. There you go, it's that easy. Shumai, definitely the easiest one to roll today, but a lot of fun and not that hard to produce, 4 or 5 portions of dumplings here. But let's move on to the next one. My personal favorite, the pork and crab soup dumplings. Now this process actually started yesterday, so let's jump back there and let you know how we got to this point. We take the pig's trotters, the pork bones, and we're gonna soak them in water for a couple of hours just to get them to clean up a little bit. Once they've been soaking, into a pot with fresh water and bring it to a boil. After it's boiled with 10 minutes, we're gonna dump that whole lot, rinse the bones and place them back into the same pot with fresh water. Now we're gonna boil these at a low kind of simmer for 2.5 hours before we add some ginger and shallots as aromats. At the same time, you're gonna take the chicken wings in a separate pot, bring them to a boil and boil them for 10 minutes before you drain them off, rinse them and add them to the broth with the pork bones in it. You're gonna simmer this lightly for another 3 hours. At that point, you're gonna pass the stock through a sieve. You're gonna season it with some soy sauce, and then you're gonna put it into a flat tray and into the fridge overnight. After it's rested overnight, this is what you end up with, a gelatinous stock that we're gonna cut up and fold through the rest of our mix. We'll just cut up what we need. The rest we can just save as a stock by shoving it in the freezer and freezing it down. Pork mince, same as before. You want something with a bit of fat in it. And then the crab. Now you can buy your own crabs, cook them and pick them, or you can just buy picked crab meat. When it comes to processes like this, just choose what you have time for. 500 grams of meat, and I'm gonna put in about 160, 170 grams of crab meat. 1 shallot. We're just gonna dice really fine, the greens, everything. and into the bowl. Same as before, MSG, optional. A little bit of sugar, a little bit of soy sauce, shaoxing, a little bit of sesame oil, probably less than last time. Corn flour, but probably half the amount that we did last time. When the soup melts when we're cooking it, we don't want that corn flour to kind of thicken it up too much. Then kind of similar to making a cake, we're gonna mix this one twice. So we're gonna kind of get the fast or the pork and stuff ready, all well incorporated. And then we're gonna dice up our soup and we're gonna fold that through really carefully because we don't want it to break up too much. Once everything's well mixed, we're gonna get the soup cut up. Let's get it out and see what it looks like. You can see this is like, how good. So this is probably too much really for that amount of pork mince. So I'm gonna cut that down by a third. We're just gonna dice this. And we end up with these little cubes of soup. In they go. And now we wanna fold the soup through. We don't wanna mix it too harshly or it's gonna kind of break up a bit. It's really important that we make sure we've at least got one of those cubes in each of the dumplings. There we go. Same as before, shop bought wrappers, round ones this time. Keep a damp towel on top, a little bit of corn flour, bottom of the tray. And I got a confession. I haven't made these very many times in my life at all, and it's been a long time since I've rolled this style of dumpling. So, we'll learn together, I guess. Mix in the middle. Making sure there's also some of that gelatinous soup in there. Using your thumb and your index finger. With your right hand, push it to your left hand and pinch. It's not my prettiest dumpling I've ever made, and we'll see if it holds together or not. I'm sure by the time I've made all these, I'll be a bit more confident. These dumpling wrappers are a bit dry, so I've just started running my finger around the outside with some just some water. And then once you've kind of almost got it around, it's kind of should have come up to kind of this shape, and that's where you can start bringing it together and then just pinching the top. There it is. All right, let's make the pumpkin miso pot stickers. First things first, we're gonna get this pumpkin cooked. So we're gonna start with half a butternut pumpkin, and we're just gonna dice it into roughly 1 centimeter cubes. You don't need to be super particular because we're gonna kind of mash it anyway. In a separate bowl, we're gonna mix the miso, the sake, and the soy sauce, and then we're gonna dress all that cube pumpkin and then get it onto a tray that's lined with foil. Now, feel free to put it straight on the oven tray, but it does get sticky, so just be warned. Then into a 180-degree oven for 20 to 25 minutes until it's nice and softly cooked. So now our pumpkin's nice and roasted and soft, get it into a bowl. And then to that, we're gonna add some pumpkin seeds. I've got some chives here. I don't want too fine of chives in here, or they'll kind of just get lost. A little bit of white pepper, a little bit of soy sauce, just being careful because we've already roasted it in soy sauce, so we don't want it to go too salty. Sesame oil, some pumpkin seed oil would be nice in this, but I don't have any. This is a little optional step. I've got some taragoshi here, which is kind of a Japanese spicy mix. We're just gonna mix this all together, a little bit mashed up, a little bit chunky. Got the texture of the pumpkin seeds in there, and everything really nicely seasoned. Let's have a taste. Good. Gyozas, pot stickers, whatever you want to call them. I have made quite a few of these before, so clearly more confident than the last ones. But they're pretty easy. As always, cover with a damp towel. Tray with a little bit of corn flour, and then you're definitely gonna need a little bowl of water for these ones too. Take your gyoza wrapper. We're gonna put about half a tablespoon, or maybe a little bit less, just to one side, if that makes sense. Put a bit of water on that side that's the furthest away from you, and you fold it over almost like a taco. And then we start the pinch and fold. Pinch, fold, pinch and fold, pinch and fold. All the way over, give it a little bit of a reshape in the hand, and there you go. Last one, and my biggest piece of advice when it comes to rolling dumplings. Make sure you get your friends to help, because it's way more fun, and then you don't have to do it all. Anyway, let's clean this up, and then we'll get cooking some dumplings. All right, while that water's starting to boil, let's talk about dipping sauces. In most dim sum restaurants, like Cantonese or Chinese style dim sum restaurants, use like a thing of black Chinese vinegar. There should be some soy sauce and some chili oil. It's all very preference based, you know, you can do this how you want. I like 2 parts vinegar to 1 part soy sauce. I like it quite acidic. Some people like a little bit more soy sauce, like 50-50. Some chili oil and a decent amount. I like the crunchy bits in there. That's how I go. Another way, instead of the chili oil, so it's a nice little julienne pieces of ginger and into the vinegar soy sauce base. Or you can go crazy and put it in both. I'm hungry, so it's time to get these dumplings cooking. I'm gonna steam the soup dumplings and the shumai, and then we'll use a pan for the gyoza. So steaming basket, piece of paper. I got these fancy ones from the local Asian grocer that fit perfectly and have holes in them, but you can just use a piece of greaseproof paper, cut it to size. We're gonna put the soup dumplings on the bottom. Dunk, dunk. Don't overfill your baskets, otherwise they don't get enough heat and then your soup won't melt. And then the shumai. Lid on, and we won't put them on that wok with the boiling water until the water's boiling. Funnily enough. Oh, what do you know? I wrote a cookbook and the link for it is down below in the bio. Once the water is boiling, they're gonna steam for 9 minutes. Then for the pot stickers, pan on a medium-high heat, and you're gonna need a lid for this pan. Now, I don't have a lid, but I have a plate. So I'm gonna use that, but be very careful if you're using a plate because this will get very hot and doesn't have a handle, so use a towel. But it's much better if you have a pan that has a lid with a handle. Once you've got some heat in your pan, get a bit of oil in there. I'm using some peanut oil, then you're gonna lay your pot stickers in. Oh, that's not hot enough. It didn't sizzle when I put it in, so I swiftly pull it out and we'll try again in a second. That's better. I've done a video on pot stickers before where I did like a lace, which you can, the link will be in the banner up there for that one if you want to do that kind of lace effect as well. Now all we're going to do is get good color on that one side. Once you've got color on the bottom, put your lid on the top and then very carefully squeeze some water in there. Just be careful, that steam is super hot. We're going to let those steam for about 4 or 5 minutes. Let's check these out. Oh yeah, they're looking good. Time to get these off the steamer. For the shumai, we're going to garnish them with some lumpfish caviar. Yeah, it's not super expensive and it adds like a really nice pop of color. And then the soup dumplings, they're good as they are. And you can see there's all that soup in them. Ooh, I'll show you how to eat those in a second because there's a bit of a trick to it if you haven't eaten it before. It's been about 5 minutes since we put that water in there and you can hear this, oh beautiful, you can hear the sizzling stop. The steam should have cooked the top and the bottom should be nice and golden like that. So you get a nice crispy layer. Let's serve these up. There's only one thing to do, and that is to eat some of these. Soup dumplings, there's a bit of a trick to eating this. Pick it up and put it onto a Chinese spoon. Get a bit of sauce on there as well. Then you're gonna bite the edge, and then you're gonna suck the soup out. It's gonna be nuclear hot, so be careful. I love soup dumplings. The gyoza, another personal favorite. You know, the crunchiness on the bottom, and then the crunchiness of the pumpkin seeds inside, texturally an excellent dumpling. And the shumai. You can't go past that yellow wrapper. It's kind of a classic. So like I was saying, it's a fantastic meal to throw together when you've got mates coming over, and don't be afraid to get them to help you to roll them all. And if you have other recipe ideas that are perfect for when friends are coming over, here's my video on how to make 3 different types of sausage rolls. Thanks very much for watching. Like this video if you took anything from it, subscribe if you're not, and we'll see you next week for another recipe. Peace.